Okay. Hello, Dr. Sam Vaknin. I am very honored to have you here today. Thank you so much for your presence. I am very happy for this interview with you, as you are the expert on narcissism. And I would like to ask you some very relevant questions on the topic today. So why don't we start with an interview, brief introduction about you and your career and your expertise, so then we can proceed with the questions.
Yes, thank you for having me. So my name is Sam Vaknin. I am the author of the book Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, which was the book to describe narcissistic abuse. I coined the phrase narcissistic abuse, and I coined most of the language in use today to describe narcissism, at least online. Um, I've been studying narcissistic disorders of the self for well over 30 years. So I've been in this racket for 30 years. And I'm teaching in various universities, especially in Europe. I'm a professor of psychology. So now let's move from this, the not important part, to the important part. Yeah.
No, it is very important because uh, your content has been one of my first inspiration to start to understand this topic. So I am very grateful for all of your work, and especially the very important insights that you keep giving and sharing to the world about this very difficult, challenging topic that is often misinterpreted and misspoken about. So I'm very grateful that you keep sharing clarity and insight on this very relevant topic. So
Thank you.
what I would like to talk about today is I would really like to get some of your expertise on cultural narcissism. I feel that this is a topic that is extremely relevant, especially today with things going on in the world and things just exponentially growing and international relations becoming a very important part of our daily lives. I believe it is a very relevant topic, and yet I feel that very few people are truly going deeply to discuss and research on it. So that's why I would really love your input on it. And we can take this in any direction that you feel is relevant. But how about we start with the effect of technology on narcissism? I know this is an area that you're interested in. And so I would really like to discuss this and talk about this with you. And would you like to start giving your input and opinion and expertise on how, for example, internet, social media, and the incredible exponential growth of these tools in the past decade and the way that they have been impacting society, especially our relationships? I'm not sure if the effect of it was even predicted, if it was something that was wanted, but it definitely had a huge determining effect on the culture. So would you like to take it from here and then we see in what direction we can further explore?
Yes, thank you. I think we are confusing the horse with the cart. Um, it's narcissism that impacted technology, not the other way. The rise of narcissism in society preceded the creation of the modern technologies that we use today for communication, for social interaction, and so on. So, starting in the 1970s and 1980s, there have been several scholars, for example, Twenge and Campbell and others, who have documented an alarming rise in what could only be described as pathological narcissism, or at the very least, narcissistic traits and narcissistic behaviors, especially among the young. Technology was responsive to this. It's a response to this. Technology is always a laggard. Technology always observe the people who design technology, observe social trends, and then they structure technology in order to respond to these social trends and, of course, inevitably to amplify them, to enhance them. So social media and similar technologies were designed as a reaction to the need that people have felt to be seen and to feel unique. As the population exploded throughout the globe, today we are 8.3 billion people, as we have transitioned from villages to cities, where social interaction is cursory and perfunctory and limited and superficial, people felt the need to be seen in the fullest sense, not to be observed. To be observed is something else, but to be seen. In a village, you're seen. Everyone knows you. Everyone knows your family, the history of your family. Your business is everyone's business. There are negative, of course, aspects of this, but at least you feel that you are grounded, that you are immersed. It's an immersive environment. The village is an immersive environment. At least you feel that people care about you, even if the reason for caring is wrong, malevolent, but at least you are the center of attention. It could be malign attention, it could be benevolent attention or benign attention, but you're always the center of attention, and everyone is. So a village in many ways can be described as a network, the metaphor of the network. And modern technologies, especially social media, tried to recapture this network-like structure. In a village, you have a network. Everyone is a node. Everyone is equipotent. Everyone is equidistant. And the information disseminates across the network very fast. And of course, that's why we call social media social networks. It's a village model. It's an attempt to escape the city and to be seen and to be the center of attention and to be noted and to be attended to and to be perhaps criticized and perhaps supported. There are support forums and support groups and so on and so forth. This has failed miserably. This attempt has failed miserably. And what it has done, what it has accomplished instead, is a rise in atomization and the attendant solipsism and narcissism. Because social media compete with you for your time, compete for your eyeballs. They monetize eyeballs. It's an attention economy. So if you have a boyfriend, your boyfriend is in direct competition with Facebook and Instagram. Every minute you spend with your boyfriend is a minute not spent on Facebook or Instagram. So these so-called social network are actually asocial network, not antisocial, but asocial. They encourage you to give up on intimacy, to avoid human contact, to isolate yourself, to atomize the fabric of society, and thereby they render you a hostage to the social medium or the social network in the sense that 100% of your attention is dedicated, goes there, and is being monetized and in the bottom line. So social media started with good motivation, with a good idea in mind. The city is anonymous, the city is alienating. In the city, you are just a number, like in a prison, a giant prison. In a city, you are dehumanized and objectified and everything. And we're going to restore the village spirit. We're going to create networks. And in a network, you can talk to many people. You'll exchange things, recipes, I don't know what. You'll be loved and you will love back. There was this utopian view of social media and social networks. But the economy of these technologies, the profit motive of these technologies, made them go exactly the opposite way, isolating people to the absolute maximum, encouraging them actively to hate, to troll, to rage, to envy, relative positioning. You know, envy is a crucial engine of these technologies, and encouraging you to avoid all social contact, because if you are in connection or interaction with other people, this is time wasted, because you could have spent this time on social media and get these dopamine rushes or dopamine hits of likes and views and so on. This is how I think it went. It started with narcissism. Narcissism is a defense. We should never forget this. We chastise narcissism and criticize it and attack, but narcissism is merely a defense. And it's a defense against the feeling that you are disappearing. that you are no more, that no one pays attention to you, no one cares about you, no one. So this is a defense. It says maybe no one pays attention to me, but I'm godlike. I'm important. I'm omniscient. I'm omnipotent. It's self-enhancement because no one else would enhance you. It is self-supply, self-attention because no one else pays attention to you. That's how it started. And all the attempts to take care of it somehow via technology only serve to make the situation much worse.
Wow, that is a really brilliant exposition on the effects of technology, which I believe a lot of them we have not even thought about these consequences. And I, the connection between trying to create a village life in a city, I had not thought about it. That's really unique. So thank you for that input. And I remember also watching a video of yours where you talked about how cities are the first form of virtual world, and I thought that was also a really brilliant way of looking at this. The way we're disconnecting further and further from our natural tendencies, from connection to the natural world, connection to natural needs and tribe relations and so on. So it seems that we have tried to sort of fix the problem of disconnection that cities have created, but we have generated yet another problem. So instead of
Much
being
bigger
able
one.
to come back to the natural communion way of human life, we have just created another patch that has led to another consequence.
And I think
And
a much bigger problem. It's not only another problem, it's
yeah,
a much
yeah,
bigger problem.
exactly.
Another, if I may just to interject and add another dimension to the conversation. Cities are symbolic spaces. That's why I call them virtual reality.
Yeah.
They're symbolic spaces. Everything is about symbols, the manipulation of symbols, the accumulation of symbols, the exchange of symbols, the replacement of real life objects with symbols. We even replace money with symbols. No one has money. People have credit cards or they have digits in the computer at the bank. They think it's money. It's not money, of course. And similarly, people are beginning to interact remotely. They have long distance relationships. They have friends on Facebook and so on and so forth. So when we created cities, we disengage from reality, not only from nature, not only from our nature, but we disengage from reality. We made a choice to transition from a real space or a natural space to a symbolic space. Now, social media attempted to reverse this. They attempted actually to transition back, to revert from a symbolic space to a real space. The idea was that as you interact with people, you get to know them, and there's going to be a spillover. You're going to meet them in real life, and you're going to develop, even lonely people, schizoid people, are going to find friends. But of course, what has happened is that we ended up converting people into symbols. While hitherto we converted mostly objects into symbols, living environments into symbols, we symbolized almost everything except people. Now with social media, we are converting people into symbols as well. And the next stage, of course, is the metaverse, where we would be interacting not even with people, but with the symbols that represent people in the game, with the avatars. That is completely narcissistic. This is exactly what happens in the narcissist mind. The narcissist mind is a giant metaverse where every external person in the narcissist life, what we call external object in psychology, every human being in the narcissist life is converted automatically, instantaneously, into an internal object in the mind of the narcissist. And that internal object is an avatar. It's a representation of that person in the narcissist's mind, and therefore very reminiscent of a metaverse.
Thank you so much for this clarification. That was actually exactly where I wanted to go next, because the
I often do that. My apologies.
no, that's okay. That's perfect. So it means we're on the same page. So the virtual reality space, I was going to mention that from my observations and experiences, it seems that we're transitioning into a narcissistic type of world, because virtual reality is essentially a non-reality which is based on projection. And as you said, that is very similar to the mind, the narcissistic mind. And now we also have the phenomenon of artificial intelligence, which is adding another layer to all of this complexity and all of these mechanisms. So now so many of the functions that were considered human before, functions that were even daily functions that we performed on a daily basis in a traditional, let's say, society, are now being slowly, actually fast, not so slowly, replaced by robots and artificial intelligence mechanisms. So I can see from my own experience how, for example, using Google Maps on a daily basis has sort of led me to forget a little bit of my orientation capabilities and reading, abilities to read maps. So imagine what will happen as we replace relationships with not only virtual, but AI generated relationships. So I would like to have you take the floor on this, because I believe you have a lot of expertise and opinions on this subject as well.
Just a small correction before we proceed. These symbolic spaces are based on introjection, not on projection, on the conversion of everything outside into an internal object, including people.
Yes.
So even people are converted into internal object. When we convert an external object, even if it is a real object, even if it is a belief, even if it is an idea, even if it is an ideology, when we convert these into internal elements, internal components, then we call this process introjection. Regarding your question, again, I think what has happened is that there was a social trend, and technology is reactive to it. The social trend is what we call in psychology contumaciousness. Contumaciousness means the rejection of authority, the hatred of authority. So there's a hatred of authority. There's a hatred of political authority. There's a hatred of intellectual authority. There's a hatred of learning and expertise and knowledge. There's a hatred because it's a narcissistic defense. If you know more than I do, then you are superior to me. And you can't be superior to me because I'm God. It's a narcissistic reaction. So contumaciousness is an element in psychopathic narcissism. It is an element in what we call reactance, which is a fancy way of saying defiance. Okay. So it started with contumaciousness. We saw it in the 60s. Started in the 60s. 1968, the revolutions all over Europe, France, this, that. The 1960s in the United States, the hippies, the schmippies, all these movements, free love, and you name it. There was a rejection of authority. It started with a rejection of political authority, it always does, but it ended up with a rejection of the intellect, intelligence, knowledge, learning, books, hatred, not only rejection, absolute emotional investment in hatred, which is the inevitable outcome of envy. And now that we have rejected authority, what could replace it? The mob, the crowd. So we have Wikipedia. We have Wikipedia long before artificial intelligence. What is Wikipedia? Wikipedia is a rejection of experts and authorities. It is the crowd or the mob creating its own encyclopedia. I mean, the hell with you, the Britannica. The hell with the Encyclopedia Britannica. We are much better, So crowdsourcing is an example of ochlocracy, mob rule. It's an example of a rebellion against established intellectual authority. Artificial intelligence is nothing but crowdsourcing. It's just another name for crowdsourcing. What artificial intelligence models do, they scan billions of pages, and they give you the answer. That is a great description of crowdsourcing. And that's exactly what Wikipedia does. Only Wikipedia does it with human beings. Human beings scan these billions of pages, then they create an encyclopedia. Here, A technology is scanning these very same pages, and it creates its own encyclopedia, in effect. Artificial intelligence is Wikipedia extended by other means. That's all. It's a rebellion against intellectual authority. That's why artificial intelligence lies a lot. Artificial intelligence models hallucinate. They give you wrong answers very often. It's false and it's a lie and it's a scam and a swindle. When the artificial intelligence companies tell you the accuracy is 99%, they are bullshitting you. I would be surprised if it's 30%.
Wow.
I tested various artificial intelligence models. I asked them 20 factual questions about my life. Factual, fact-based, like where was I born? I tested them. They failed 8 out of 10 times. 8 out of 10 times, they got the answers wrong. I was born in Macedonia. I wasn't. I was born in Israel. I happen to be right now in Macedonia, but I was born in Israel. One example, yes. My sister wrote the book Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. I'm kidding you not.
Well.
So this is artificial intelligence, where the illiteracy and the ignorance and the stupidity of the masses is accumulated, structured, shaped, and spewed out, garbage in, garbage out. It's precisely the model of artificial intelligence. And for a very, very long time, it was the model, the working model of the Wikipedia. Until Wikipedia has been taken over by expert editors. And now it's much closer to a traditional encyclopedia. You can't just do whatever you want. There are strict structures that make sure that you don't vandalize and you don't spread nonsense and misinformation and so on. Wikipedia has become a trustworthy resource because it stopped being a crowdsourcing resource. Artificial intelligence also involves another trend, the trend of outsourcing. So not only crowdsourcing, but outsourcing. Outsourcing is when we say we would like internal psychological processes to be regulated from the outside rather than from the inside. So, for example, we derive our sense of self-worth and self-esteem and self-confidence from the number of likes and views that we get on social media. That is external regulation. The outside regulates a process that should have been completely internal. Your self-esteem should not rely on what other people have to say about you. You should know yourself well, and your self-esteem is a derivative of this. End of story. And so we have begun in the last 40 years to outsource something called external regulation. So our moods, for example, are now very responsive to the outside, much less than to the inside. Our cognitions are shaped by the outside. We don't do research anymore. We don't, we embed ourselves in like-minded thought silos with confirmation bias, and we keep repeating the same mantra over and over and over again ad nauseum. It's not. So this is the second trend, outsourcing of internal functions. We became essentially hollowed out, emptied. We became externally regulated zombies. And this is the second trend. And when you outsource, you of course transition from an internal locus of control to an external locus of control. In other words, you begin to believe that your life is determined from the outside, not from the inside. Because indeed, you have outsourced your mind. You gave authority of your mind to external factors. And of course, this immediately gives rise to conspiracy theories and paranoid ideation. You can see that it's a chain. These links are inexorable. They lead to each other naturally and with great inner reason. And so we are going there. We are going to the end of a human being as we used to know it. we humanity started its self-reflection and self-perception as agent, based on the concept of agency. You were, for example, a moral agent. And now if you're a moral agent, that means you should be punished if you misbehave, because you're an agent, you have agency. But wait a minute, if everything is outsourced and crowdsourced, and maybe whatever it is that you do is not punishable because you have lost your agency. And then you have people like Donald Trump, who never pay the price for their crimes, you know, because he claims the agency is not his. He's being persecuted, he's being victimized. And of course, this sits well with the age of victimhood. The famous sociologist Bradley Campbell said that we have transitioned from the age of dignity to the age of victimhood. What is victimhood? Is when you hand control over yourself to someone else. When you outsource your locus of control, it becomes external locus of control. And I could go on like that forever. These are processes that are interlinked. They feed on each other. And they affect other issues. For example, the very idea of truth and originality. Walter Benjamin, of course, was the first to discuss the issue of originality in the age of mechanical copying and so on and so forth. But I think he didn't go far enough, Walter Benjamin, because had he gone one step further, he would have realized that the concept of originality is inextricably linked to the concept of truth. Originality is not only about authenticity, it's about truthfulness, about the truth, the very concept of truth. And what he failed to realize, in my view, is that the age of mechanical copying would lead us to the erosion of the very concept of truth. Because if nothing is original and everything is a copy, if nothing is a copy and everything is original, then everything is relative. And if everything is relative and there's no fixed point, no Archimedean point, then everything is simultaneously false and true, depending on your point of view, your personal history. In other words, opinion becomes the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's all interlinked. And again, I'm not joking when I say that I can continue for a few hours discussing all these, because there are many more
I'm
trends,
sure of that. I believe you.
many additional trends. But I just wanted to give you a taste of what the way I see things.
And I could definitely go a few hours listening to you talk about this topic, because again, like I said, I feel like we really are not going into depth enough, and it is a very relevant topic. It's changing our society radically and exponentially fast, and we're not really thinking about the consequences. So I'm glad at least someone is thinking about the consequences and talking about them with the world. So thank you so much for having so much insight and so much interest into really going deep into these kinds of dynamics, which
Thank you.
I feel like as someone who's an expert on narcissism and narcissistic tendencies and behaviors, you probably can see very much more accurately the dangers of these dynamics and how we are encouraging these kinds of behaviors, both at the social level, collective level, but also at the individual pathological level. So it is, I think it's great that you're doing this as a service to explore these.
Yeah,
these
but
issues.
you and I are members of an extinct species.
Yeah, I
We're
believe so.
dinosaurs. We're
Yeah.
dying. We're dying.
Yeah,
And we are
that's
dying because no one would listen to us. And we are also dying because people are incapable of listening to us because they're dumb, they're uneducated, or they choose to not listen. There is a defense against learning, there's a resistance to learning, and so there's anti-intellectualism, hatred of learning and knowledge, and so a rejection of intellectual authority, or at the very least, scholarly authority, and so on. So we are fast disappearing. People like us are fast dying. And I feel a sense of futility. Having spent my entire life basically learning and studying and reading and teaching, and I feel a sense of futility because the world, at least for the next 100 or 200 years, because we're entering a period of a few hundred years, at least for the next few hundred years, maybe 200. Things are much faster nowadays than they used to be in the Middle Ages. So maybe it'll be shorter,
Yeah.
maybe 200 years, but definitely many decades. We're entering a period where people like us are gradually going to become the enemies. At this stage, we are ignored. At this stage, people like us are being ignored. Some of us are getting fired. Some of us are getting criticized. Some of us are getting threatened, mildly, or not so mildly. But there will come a time that people like us will be executed physically. It's a question of time, not a question of if. That's where we're heading. And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel very despondent. I despair. I have great despair. And it reminds me of how intellectuals reacted to the rise of fascism and Nazism in the 20s and 30s of the last century in Europe,
Mhm.
and how they just gave up. They stopped talking, not because they were afraid, but they simply saw no meaning in opposing this tsunami that no one can oppose, you know? And some of them committed suicide, simply committed suicide. So I don't feel it is my world anymore. I grew up among books. I adored and admired learned people. These were my role models and heroes. And while in the 50s, the number one superstar was Albert Einstein, today it probably would be some obscure footballer or influencer or Kardashian type. The world is debased. The world is corrupted in the worst sense of it's rotten in the worst sense of the word. And I see no hope in the near term. Obviously, because stupid people are taking over, narcissistic people are taking over. Obviously, the world will implode, and within 200 years, there will be massive devastation. I'm not ruling out a nuclear war, absolutely not. There will be massive devastation. And then people like you and me, we will have to rebuild the world. We'll have to rebuild it. And of course, ultimately, there is hope. If you're willing to wait 300 years, there is hope. But the next 200 300 years are going to be absolutely horrible. A combination of the worst part of the Middle Ages, because there was a part of the Middle Ages which was not bad, actually, but the worst part, the early Middle Ages, and the worst part of the 20th century. That's where we're heading, a confluence, a marriage between the early Middle Ages and the 1920s and 30s in Europe, in the world, not only Europe.
I see that that trend definitely, and that's why I sort of I keep talking, even though maybe it could be to deaf ears. But I have always a little bit of a hope that maybe by planting seeds somewhere, something will survive. You know, some kind of consciousness and self-awareness and willingness to really explore and understand and to do something constructive with life. You never know, but you know, maybe it will survive. So, if nothing else, it makes my life a little bit more worthy of living. Um,